challenges you to connect and equips you to serve. Enjoy the message. Well, hey, welcome to Proverbs on the Patio. Chapter 29 is where we'll be reading from here in just a few minutes, a few seconds really. If you've never joined us for Proverbs on the Patio, I go through the book of Proverbs chapter by chapter. Usually I'm on the patio. I'm not tonight. Got home a little late tonight and the lighting wasn't working for me out there. You've just seen a big old blotch of darkness, so I'm going to be jumping into Proverbs chapter 29 here in just a second. We won't read the whole chapter together, just a few verses that I've pulled out. Before I jump into the book of Proverbs, I want to remind you that this coming Sunday, Restore Church is going to be returning to two services. An indoor service at 9:30 a.m., masks and social distancing, a lot of chairs have been pulled out, and then we'll also be having an outdoor service at 11 a.m. for our second service. So during the first service, we'll have kids, we'll have cry rooms available for those with little ones, and they're welcome to join us in the main auditorium, as well as our student ministry going on during the 9:30 service, and then during the 11 a.m. service, everybody's welcome underneath the event tent that is on our property. With that being said, I'm excited about this next step as we continue to reopen. I've always said we'd never be the first church to reopen, and we certainly wouldn't be the last church, so we are doing our best to maintain safety, protect you, and also be a beacon of hope and light in a dark time for our community and our society. With that being said, let's jump into chapter 29 of the book of Proverbs. I'm not going to read the whole passage, but there are a handful of verses I'd like to pull out for you. Verse 2, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. It matters that we are righteous. Listen, in this case, it's talking about in leadership and in authority, and this is true certainly politically, but it's also true in our work environment, in our home environment. We don't just need to have people who are in authority or in control. We need people of morality, and it matters that what we do behind the scenes matches who we say we are out front. Verse 3, he who loves wisdom makes his father glad, but a companion of prostitutes squanders his wealth. The second part there is pretty blunt, talks about not wasting your wealth, but the first part makes it clear that when we do what's right, we don't just have an opportunity to bless the generation behind us. A lot of times we think, if I should do what's right so that my kids see what's right, and that's certainly true, but this makes it clear that when we do what's right, it also blesses the generation that's come before us, our parents, our grandparents. It says it makes the father glad. We should do our best not just to leave a good legacy for the generation coming behind us. We should also do our best to honor our parents, our father and our mother. I think about this often. I don't know about you, but I think about the things that I post online, and I think in terms of my grandchildren one day are going to come behind and see that if the internet's still around or they moved on to something else. But also right now, our parents see that. My grandparents know the life that I'm living. And when we do what's right, it honors them and it makes them glad. Skip on down to verse 5 with me. A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. It's interesting that it doesn't actually tell us whose feet the net is spread for. What it's making clear is this, that flattery always spreads a trap, either for the person's who is flattering someone or the person who's being flattered, and that's why we just need to avoid flattery. Listen, you need to make sure you don't just offer flattery to your kids and prepare them for a life where they think they're just going to be complimented when they don't actually do a good job. We need to be careful that we don't receive flattery from people who don't always have our best interest at heart. We need to make sure that we don't surround ourselves with people who only tell us what we want to hear, and also that we don't tell people what they want to hear. I'm going to skip on down to verse 11 for the next little verse I'd like to pull out. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. Man, I can't believe how much this really hit me as I read through this and thought through this. The truth is that I have often found great joy in venting, but then when I get done venting, I don't always feel good. I meet with some pastors sometimes, and we'll get into the mode of venting and, man, just letting all of our frustrations hang out. And that happened this past week, and when we got done, I didn't feel any better. And as I read through this verse, it made me realize, it's not always good to vent your spirit. Sometimes it's wise to quietly hold back. Now, certainly we don't want to bottle anything up. We want to make sure that we are being honest and sharing, but there is a line sometimes that I am prone to cross when I'm venting, and I get into just anger and, man, just no real control in that moment. And so here we see that a fool lets go of his control and vents his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. Verse 12 is really interesting if you've ever worked in an environment like this. If a ruler listens to falsehood, all his officials will be wicked. This is why it matters so much that we have leaders in our work, in government, everywhere, who are just given over to honesty and trying to find the truth, trying to find what is real, trying to find what will help people. When we give in to just what we want to hear, or we only listen to what we want to hear, we create a silo where we don't listen to anything outside of our little bubble. We create a culture of people who, it says here, will be wicked. We need to make sure that we are people who listen to criticism even when it hurts a little bit. We need to be sure that we surround ourselves with people who are given to truth. Verse 17, you know it well. It's a theme that has come up often. Discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart. Guys, we can't say it often enough. It matters that we have discipline in our lives, that we receive discipline well from those who are in authority over us, maybe our parents, maybe our boss, maybe somebody who is influential in our life. But then it says this is going to lead you to rest and enjoyment. And then the last one I'll read to you is verse 25, down at the bottom of the passage. The fear of man lays a snare. It's a trap. But whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. The fear of man lays a snare. I want you to think about this with me. How many people, the fear of what other people think robs them of joy, robs them of purpose, robs them of just the bravery to do some things that they would do if they weren't so afraid of how it would be received, how people would think about them, what people would say. And I have to admit, this is one of those traps that I think about often. There are a lot of things I don't say. There are a lot of things I don't do because I'm afraid of what people will think. And I'm a pastor. So if anybody shouldn't be afraid of what people think, it's me. But I have to admit to you, I am constantly at battle in my own heart over what people will think or how they will receive it. There are things I haven't done in our church. There are things I've avoided in ministry that probably could have helped our church and probably could have helped our ministry reach more people, but sometimes I'm afraid of how it will be received and what people might say. Oh, Pastor Mark just wants his name out there. Oh, Pastor Mark's just doing that because he wants to see their church grow. And if I'm honest, a lot of times it's not that I have good reasons not to do something, it's that I don't want us to be perceived by people for doing something that I know isn't even in our hearts. Look, our church has never been a church that's even really been accused of doing things to just get more numbers. We've always been out there in the community active, trying to engage people, trying to reach people, trying to help people, and trying to help people get saved with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's who we are and that's what we do. But man, it's crazy how when I read this verse, it was so apparent, like that's just where I'm at. That's what I struggle with sometimes. And maybe you don't struggle with that. Notice the next verse, the next part of the verse. But whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. Hey, I don't need to place my trust in what other people think, because here's the truth. Whether I have the best intentions or not, people are always going to have something to say. People are always going to be willing to say something. But when I place my trust in God, I'm like, you know what? We're going to do what we can. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to do all that I can to do what's right. Well, then I'm just going to trust the Lord with the difference, because here's the truth. People are always going to have an opinion. They're always going to have something to say. So why let that rob you? It says here it's a trap. It's a trap. It's a snare. It will cause you harm. So that is the verse that honestly, if there's one verse out of this whole chapter, that's the one I've been chewing on and thinking over. So I just want to put it to you like this. What is it that you have been afraid to do because of what people might think? Now, on the flip side, there are some things we don't do because of what people think that we shouldn't do. Like there's positive peer pressure too. Like it's good that people would think ill of you if you cheated on your spouse, if you stole money from your business. Like, listen, some of those are good. But then there are some ways in which we allow the fear of men to trap us, to keep us boxed in, to keep us from doing things that would honor God, that would make a difference in the community, that would, promote the gospel in every area of our life. So what is it that if you weren't afraid of what people thought, you'd be willing to do? And then I would ask you this, what if you trusted God to help you do that and to get over the fear of what people think? I think that's a powerful truth if we could just get a hold of it. Hey, that's all I've got from Proverbs chapter 29. Hope you are reading through chapter 30. We'll jump in there next week. I'm looking forward to that. Little plug here. Next week, I will make sure this goes out. This will be online, but we'll be meeting the first Wednesday in January, just like we'll be meeting every first Wednesday in every month in the year of 2021. We're starting back on what we've always called First Wednesdays. It's a gathering of believers in our church. We're going to take communion together. We're going to worship. We're going to dig deep into God's Word. It's going to be a great time of worship and gathering of the church. It's typically a smaller gathering of believers in our church. On Sundays, we have, all these people coming together. Sometimes we've got non-Christians, new believers, people who know the Word, people who've never been under preaching of the Word. But on our First Wednesdays, it's a chance for Christians to get together, to worship together, and to dig deep into God's Word. So I hope you'll be there, and this will be streaming for you next week on Facebook and YouTube. Hope you guys have a great week, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night.